into practices. So I think it's looking good that we will have something to work with this year. So we're going to do breakout rooms with the C4s and 5s, and then everyone else, we're going to stay together today. I am going to be going over with the large group. We're going to be going over mostly rotations and a little bit of back row. So that's going to be the majority of what we're going to be covering today. So Robert, did you have anything you want to talk about before we get into the instruction?
Just that yesterday Ventura County got off of the purple list, so now we're on the red list, which involves schools reopening to a slight degree. So some schools are planning on going back on October 6th, and that's just a good sign that kids are starting to go back to school. Teams are going to start practicing, so that's one step closer to having a season. So that's all I have right now.
Okay.
Is volleyball like the only sport that's coming alive? I'm just wondering.
Roberts is in the waiting room.
I got it. Volleyball.
Football practices are starting. Football starts a month after volleyball. So football, I understand, is starting to, at least they're doing conditioning. And then there is one or two other was it water polo or track and field? I can't remember what other. There was one other one that was also starting.
It won't be track and field. I know we're spring.
So, and then, anyway.
Hey, Robert, did you have your meeting with Anita?
Yeah, we just finished. It was basically just following up the questions that people sent back to me. We're going to have a follow-up meeting. It's TBD right now, but it was mostly just the sports and the presidents and assigners getting on the same page. And as far as everyone's question about if masks are mandatory, it sounds like it's going to be up to every school district and school, but it's pretty in unison that everyone's going to be wearing a mask this season.
Soft mask, hard mask, and electronic whistles, or they still haven't figured out what the hell is going on?
We didn't talk about the kinds of masks, just solid colors right now, so nothing with a bunch of logos on the front. E-whistles haven't been deemed mandatory yet, but I would encourage you to get one before or as soon as possible because they take a long time to ship. Mine took 7 weeks, I think. So I'd say sooner rather than later.
But one thing I am wondering about, we had talked about potentially a bulk order. What came of that?
It's hard to get a bulk order on something less than when we only have 50 or so people. It's hard to get a discount on that. We can get a bulk order, but we probably won't get any deals.
My suggestion for those of you that want e-whistles would be to go facilitate your own e-whistle wherever you can find it.
Tony?
And I hate to, I'm going to also make the recommendation for you guys, if you buy one, buy two. Because if you're in the middle of a match, your battery dies, you can go to your bag, swap it out, just like if your whistle breaks. It's the same thing.
Tony, you had made some suggestions last time. Can you go over those again, please, so we can order?
Sure. So I happen to have this is an electronic whistle right here in front of me. This is the Fox 40. This is the 3-tone version.
Of which, who makes it?
Battery, which is, I highly recommend over the smaller ones, because there is a smaller Fox 40. It looks more like this. It's obviously much smaller, but it takes watch batteries. And so if you don't have a spare whistle, you should definitely have a spare battery in your pocket. It's easier to change a single 9-volt than it is all those little watch batteries.
Yeah. What's the maker on that, Tony, again?
This is Fox 40.
Fox 40, 3-tone?
This is the Fox 40 3-tone.
Go on Go on Amazon. They have a bunch of different ones. The Fox 40 only goes up to 120 decimals, which is louder than your whistle. They do have some electronic ones that go up to 150. So
Fox 40 right now is in the process of developing and coming to market with a louder version. They just haven't started selling them yet. There are other brands. The AVP event we used a brand called Windsor.
yeah, that's 120 also.
Yeah, Windsor 3-tone. And the reason the 3-tone just gives you different sound options. And they're usually louder. They are a little bigger with the 3-tone, but definitely worth having.
Tony, that has a wrist strap on it too, or no?
It does. The Fox 40 and actually almost all of them do come with a wrist lanyard.
Okay.
Now, I don't recommend, it's really hard to do mechanics with this on your wrist.
Oh, that's true.
Okay. So even if you hold this in your hand and let's say you beckon with this arm and you blow with this hand, that's fine. But then now when you blow the whistle to end the rally and then you have to drop it, signal, and then you trying to do mechanics, see the whistle, if you're calling a touch, it looks bad for one. Also, it could end up hitting you in the face and all sorts of stuff. So the recommendations that we've made include putting it on a lanyard, a regular neck lanyard like you would for a whistle, and have it hang about belt level. And some folks might want to have it higher or lower. It's personal preference, but my suggestion is to always have it in the same place, so you know exactly where it is when you reach for it. Now, recently, as an R2, we talked about using and having it on a neck lanyard, but we also talked about having it. This is like a badge holder that you can stretch. We talked about putting these on your belt loop, so you can actually extend it out and use it in your hand. And then after you need to make your mechanics, you let go of it, it swings down to your belt. And then you can do your mechanics and then grab it again. So I haven't had the chance yet to try that out, but I have always done the neck lanyard version. So,
Tony, which one did you like better, the Windsor or the Fox 40?
For the AVP event, we were mandated to use the Windsor, and we used that, 6-9 days over 3 weekends. So I haven't. They're both about the same, and they're actually really both about the same size. So personal preference. I think that the Windsor though used AA batteries, whereas the Fox 40 uses a 9-volt. So there's a slight difference.
Yeah,
there.
I think there's I saw today, the Windsor was.
You cut out there.
Sorry, I said the Windsor one was $20 on Amazon and the Fox was $40.
Yeah, I know that some of the folks that are, because Fox 40 is more of a name brand, I know that the folks that are selling them are kind of supply and demand, jacking the price. So I would, the Windsor and the Fox 40 are the two that I'm most familiar with and have seen and have had the most success with. So that's why I recommend those.
All right. Do we have any more questions before we go into breakout rooms?
Looking to find out who the phone number 5227 is.
That's John Roberts.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Breakout rooms are open.
Hey, John, I got a question for you.
Is that Mike? You have a mic?
Yeah, I have a question. Somehow I got disconnected. You were talking about the whistles, face mask, and everything else. Have you seen this little pouch for the Fox 40 whistles that Jerry Davis has online? That I guess they're made for the whistles, and so the spit doesn't go everywhere.
I have one.
You have one?
Yeah,
Oh, you
What-
got
what-
the mask?
yeah.
Yeah, it's just that little covers up the mask of the whistle itself.
No, the whistle goes inside. I'll go grab it in a minute. It's a
Okay.
regular black mask, and then there's like a little pouch right here, and the whistle sits in it. And there's actually even a hook for your whistle, so that way you can still basically hold on to it, but your hands are free.
I didn't look like that when I saw it on Jerry Davis's website. Okay, yeah, would you please?
Sure.
Okay.
Soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kathy, could we use that one too?
Yeah, it's actually made for it. It's just it gives you hands free. It's just that your whistle's in there the whole time. So
Yeah, I looked at that. Kind of liked it. It looked nice.
I don't want to stall breakout, but as soon as we get a break, I'll run upstairs. Actually, I'll have somebody bring it down, and then I'll show you guys.
Robert, send over Laura to me.
Okay.
Robert, do you have everybody in the different rooms now?
Someone left and came back, so I'm adding one more. Actually, where'd she go? She disappeared. Yeah, you can get started.
Okay. All right, guys. So, like I said, we're going to be spending a lot of time today on alignments, which tend to be probably one of the hardest areas of our job is identifying and successfully calling out of alignment, out of rotations. And that also goes into identifying your setters, where they're located front and back for during play, so that you're aware of potential back row violations, which certainly can involve all the players, but have a tendency to involve the setter more than others by a long shot. But I think all of us know that. For some of the ones who were with us some of the guys who were with us last week, I apologize. Some of this is going to be redundant, but I want to get this information out to everybody. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so this is for player positioning and overlap. It's rule 6.4. Okay. All of this occurs, basically the most important thing is moment of serve. So that's why you have to be listening for the contact of serve if you are the R2, because you're listening for contact of serve, because that's going to determine where your players are at that particular moment in order to call player position faults. Okay. The way the rule reads, and this is important, is that each right side player must have part of one foot touching the floor closer to the right sideline than both feet of the center player in the corresponding row. So right side players have to be closer to the right sideline than the center players. Conversely, left side players have to be closer. Left side players have to be closer to the left sideline than center players. Then we talk about front and back. The front players must be closer to the center line than the back row players. Okay, and we'll talk as we go through. But those the closer then is the wording that's important. So here are your adjacent players. So a right front can overlap with either a center front or a right back. The right front cannot overlap with any of these other three players. So these, with the right front, you're concerned with these guys. Here's an example of the center front being closer to the right sideline than the right front. Okay. So this would be an example of an illegal alignment, and we will blow our whistle here. Okay. Don't worry about the right back. The center front and the right back have nothing to do with each other. So if, for example, the right back was pulled over here and this right front was closer to the sideline and moved over, we would have no issue with the center front and the right back. Okay, they're not going to affect each other. Okay. Corner players, like we said, so here again, the left back, same situation. They can overline with the center back or the left front, and the left front can overline with the center or the center front or the left back. Okay. These guys, center fronts, have the most. They have to watch out for both players on both sides of them, along with their corresponding center in front or behind them. All right. Center front not closer to the center line than the center back. Okay, so this again is an illegal alignment where the center front is closer to the front than the center back. We are talking body part here. We are not talking if they are leaning forward, but their feet are, if the center back's feet were behind or adjacent to the center front and not getting an advantage, but his body was leaning forward, we're not going to call that. It means nothing. It's the whatever's touching the whatever's touching the floor. All right. If you have questions, let me know too. Okay.
Jeff, I got a quick question.
Go ahead.
1 foot, is that all it takes to?
Yes.
Yeah.
One toe is all it takes.
Okay.
Okay. So if 1 foot or toe or part of 1 foot is closer, if it's the right foot but the left foot is behind there, he's still out of alignment.
Okay, but you can lean. Okay, but you can lean all the way over just like your body can with 2 feet down,
Correct.
or you can even have 1 foot down still leaning as long
Correct.
as that
If you're in
foot
the
is
middle
still
of a step, right? Correct. If you
Yeah.
have if you have a setter who's moving possibly and his left foot is behind the person, but his right foot is in the air getting ready to land in front of the person, as long as that at the moment of contact, that left foot was behind and the other foot's in the air, we're good. You're gonna let it go.
Gotcha.
Pretty darn close anyways. Okay. This technically by rule is illegal because the center front is not closer. He's even with, but he's not closer to the center line. We are not going to call this. Okay? If these two players are in, if you cannot differentiate that one of these players is closer, if they look aligned perfectly, we are letting that go. Okay? We are not going to make this call, even though technically by rule, you have a foot to stand on, so to speak, but we're not going to call that. We are going to let that go. We want to use advantage, disadvantage in this situation, and we want to use preventative officiating. Okay, this is a difficult call. All alignment calls are difficult. I'll give you that. I mean, even us who have been doing it for a long, long time, we'll see things we're not quite sure about. If you're not sure, if you can't explain it and you're not sure, my suggestion is to let it go. Then at the proper time, talk it over with your partner and say, hey, what did you see? Or this is what I saw. What should, did I call it right? That's either a timeout discussion, a between sets discussion, or an after match discussion with your partner. Oftentimes when I'm working with newer officials, I know they're having difficulty with this, and we'll talk about how to work with newer officials in a little bit, but oftentimes I'll after a match, I'll try and diagram for them exactly if I saw something that they weren't calling, and I think it's egregious, it was something that really should have been called because they were getting an advantage, then I will often try and diagram that for the official. But again, I know and be patient with younger officials, this call takes a while, okay? Okay, so this is just a quick little check. The player in the right back position must be behind which player?
Right front.
Okay, correct. It'll be the right front. Okay, so right back and right front. For front back stuff, it's going to be your right sides together if it's the right back we're asking about here. front row players must be closer to that than their corresponding back row players. Corresponding mean center to center, left to left, right to right. That would be a true statement. Okay. However, don't get caught up in that all front row players must, not all front row players must be closer. That is not a correct statement. There can be back row players that are closer to the net than a front row player, as long as it is not a corresponding player, meaning left side, right side, or center. Okay. We've talked about this. I talked about this last, that's why I said it was redundant for some people that were in ours last time. This does tend to be a second to third year call. That's when these calls start to click with people, is when they're getting into their third year, fourth year. If have a strong volleyball background, like you came from coaching, it usually will click a little bit earlier with them, because you're dealing with alignments all the time. Whereas people who are kind of new to the game or new to officiating volleyball aren't really haven't had to deal with alignments very much. So it's much harder for them than it is for those who have, like I said, who have more volleyball experience. Okay. This is the big one right here. Well, right here. Who is the setter? Are they front or back? What is the setter's number? Prior to each serve, where is that center? Front row, back row. Now here's the other thing. I always try and know the setter and who their opposite is going to be, because I will track those two as they move around the court, because 90% of the time you'll be able to catch it. Those two do not line up opposite. You have an issue. Doesn't necessarily mean one of them is responsible for the issue. It could be another teammate, but that other teammate has put one of those two players out of alignment, in the wrong spot. So that's letting you know. Okay. I know everyone has their different ways of sort of identifying or remembering who your setter is and how your alignment work. Tony, if you're still here, actually not right now, but a little later, I'd like you to maybe share what some of your techniques are, or if anybody else has some techniques that they use. I'll share my little techniques with you that I use, but if other people have other techniques that they use to sort of remember, determine alignment, I'd like to hear it, or like you to share it with the group. Okay. All right. Remember, we're not trying to catch somebody doing something wrong here. Again, if you cannot see the overlap without moving, they are good. Meaning, if you are the R2 and you are in your normal position just off of the net on the receiving side, okay, and you have to go past the 10-foot line or past out of the sub zone to see if that player is aligned correctly, okay, you're not going to make that call. That you probably don't need to be making that call. It means it is too close. We don't want to count floorboards, okay? What I do use is I often will use existing lines of the basketball court to help me, because the center circle of the basketball court, which is right in the net, and the free throw circle where they're doing from are parallel to each other. So you can use that back circle and that front circle to sort of look to help you determine where those players are. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Okay, if you cannot see the overlap without moving, warn, okay, preventative officiating here. If you have a potential situation and you can warn the player and or the coach, okay, to avoid the foul, go ahead and do that, okay? Don't make it super obvious where the other coach is gonna go, well, what are you doing? You know, but say, hey, coach, you better watch number 23. Or, you know, I'll walk up close to the court, number 17, make sure you're on the court. And that would be for where a player's foot is off the court, okay? Okay, and remember at the moment of serve, okay? Okay, it is rare for the R1 to call a serving team for an overlap because we all know that the serving team has more, hang on, Kath, I'll be right there. The serving team has more time to get to the positions that they want. It's the receiving team that needs to get that setter quickly to the middle spot to receive the pass. Go ahead, Kath. Did you have a question?
What I was going to say, asking for kind of commentary is the typical for the R1, it's going to be your middle coming in for a sub. That's going to be an obvious because they're going to probably go to middle position versus left front, subbing in. And then possibly your libero replacement. That would be your two possible calls that I have called for the R1, just to offer.
Correct, and that's good. And it's always helpful. You want to be watching too who your last server was. That's good information to know when they're moving. It helps me sometimes by knowing who my last server was to help determine their proper position. Okay. Yeah, I'll never forget. I was doing a playoff game. This is when I was officiating up in the north, so I wasn't a member of Channel Coast at the time. And I came down to do a semifinal or something, and it was a boys game, and it was San Marcos. And every time this one guy would serve, he would then be in the next receive, and this was as I was the R2. In the next receive, he would be closer to the net. He'd be standing right at the net, hidden and closer to the net than anyone else. I blew 3 times in a row. I blew this before the coach was screaming at me, and I finally said, look, how can he be closer to the net? And they were like, oh. So it took them a while, but it was just a strange situation there where they weren't catching that.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Jerry Burns brought up a good comment, and I think it's just something worth mentioning is that if you're going to give a warning to one side, I think it's important that we tell everybody else we're going to give a warning to the other for the same violation.
Yeah, it
Make
is.
sure that's balanced and equal and stuff like that. So
correct.
Thanks, Jerry.
You're going to give the same courtesy you gave to one that you gave to the other. If you have a setter who might be leaving a little early and you're going to warn the coach, if you have on the other side, if you have a player who might be encroaching just a little bit out of their position, warn the coach. Okay. Okay. Center, front, and back row. Okay. It's so important to know who the setter is, because then it becomes now we're kind of moving into the area of illegal attacks and blocking and back row blocking. So if if you're doing a 5-1 and you have the setter moving all the way around, you got to remember where he is or know where they are when they're front row and back row, because obviously they're front row, you have a lot less issues. You're not going to have to worry about a back row attack or a back row block. Vice versa, though, when they're in the back row, you got to be watching them. If they run a 6-2, which you'll see more often in the JV level and the freshman level, because they want to get more people experience, and you will see it at the varsity level too. But if they're running a 6-2, your setter is usually always coming from the back row, okay? Or should be in most cases, not all the time, but should be. Okay? I know on my club team when we were running. We ran one where we ran, out of the right front, we kept a front row player. When the setter was right front, we kept him front row and let him set from the front row, but then it became the back row every other time. So, okay, because the back row setter in the front zone jumps and sets the ball, which is higher than the top of the net. You need to know for whether they're gonna do a dump, okay, that's one potential, or if the set wasn't perfect and it happens to float into the neutral zone or break the plane of the net and is legally blocked, then you have a back row attack on that setter. Okay, even though that was not their intention. Their intention was not to set the ball over or try and use it as an attack, but it just so happened that it floated into the neutral zone. Okay. Okay. And then also, for overpasses, it becomes important too, because if you have a back row setter and you have an overpass and that ball gets put back into the setter's hands, we have a couple of different scenarios there that can happen that we'll talk about later. Okay. Okay, back row block. The back row setter tries to save the ball, a ball in the net plane, and the blocker legally touches it. So we're talking here, could be going up one-handed. He's trying to bring it back to his side, okay? And it gets blocked down into their fist, okay, we're going to have a back row block. That's number one. Or trying to save the ball and the setter gets to it first, but puts it into the hands of the blocker. Now we have a back row attack on that player. We do not call back row until that ball has crossed the net. So if you have a back row attack, there's actually the hitter leaves from the attack line, for example, and hits the ball and is directing the ball to the other court, attacks the ball. We don't call it until that ball has broken the plane, either been blocked or completely gone past the plane. Because if the ball was to go into the net, we don't call it. If it does not pass the net, if that hitter made a mistake and put the ball into the net, we do not have a back row attack at that point. All right.
Renee?
Question somewhere? No, we're good. Okay. All right. So this is for us as we're working with younger officials. Please take the time to help them and explain and talk to them. I'm going to ask and ask them how they want you to help them with that call, because we know first, second years are going to be struggling with this call and may not see it. Do they want you to make the call? Not my number one recommendation. I try and get them. What kind of signals might you have or communication might you have during the match that could help them identify that they have a alignment problem, that it could be an alignment fault there. Okay. This is not correct. We do not use a lineup card in California. Again, these are this PowerPoint was CIF. This slide presentation came from CIF. So there, just what I said, who is opposite the setter. They talk about who leads and follows the setter. I don't tend to remember that or put that in my head unless I know it's been a reoccurring problem. Unless I see something during the match that tells me, hey, these two are always having issues with where they're supposed to be lining up. And in that case, then I might be more look at who's in front and who's behind to know that. Okay. So anybody want to share any? Oh, well, let me share mine real quick. I just try and play a numbers game with these guys. If I know my setter is number 4 and the opposite is 12, I try to come up mathematically with something like, oh, 4 is a product of 12, or can be divided evenly, or 12 rather can be divided evenly by 4. So I play a game like that where I just try and get the numbers to, have some correlation to each other. If it's a 2 number, if it's number 15 and number 6, maybe I'll go, oh well, 15, 1 plus 5 is 6, and then 6. Opposite 6. Just things like that are things that I do. What do some other officials do to help sort of identify who your opposite is and who your setter is? Don't everyone talk at once. Tony, what do you do?
I try and always remember what number my setter is and who the other thing that I do, especially if in the match somewhere I kind of lose track, and I do this more obviously as an R2, if I know as I'm getting ready to look at the team that's getting ready to receive serve, okay, I will then actually look through the net and look at the serving team to figure out their 3 front row players, in which order they're in, because they're serving, they have to be in order. And then I'll look at the server. So I know 4 of the 6. So then when that team, the serving team, then the receiving team sides out, and I go back to now look at the team that just served, those 3 players that were at the net blocking have to be the closest people to the net in serve receiving. Does that make sense? And then this person that served also has to be behind someone, and they have to be the closest to the right sideline. So when you look at the serving team and they go back to serve receive, you know 4 of the 6 already, and you generally know the 3 that have to be closest to the net and the 4th who has to be behind somebody. And I will continue to do that. So now once I know those 4 and I'm looking at them in serve receive, I'll look at the other serving team, their 3 front row and who's serving for them. So now when they side out, I go and look at them and they have to be in that same order. So it's kind of, I'm always looking.
Preloading. You're basically preloading for the next rotation. Receive rotation is what you're doing.
Right. And if you do that from the beginning, after you've checked the lineup, where they're all in correct order, that's kind of all I do. Is, you know, if for some reason, especially if teams run a 6-2 or they do a lot of subbing where you don't necessarily can't do a numbers memory game. As I get older, I know my memory is not as great with numbers, but I always know if I look one play ahead, at least I can identify 4 of the 6 positions and where they have, and know that those 3 have to be in front.
All right. Good. Thank you. And I also know Tony, as all you know, Tony does a ton of high level stuff, and the college game, man, they have a coach. They usually, each team has a coach who does nothing but track where everybody is on that receiving team, and they are right on you. If they think he has a millimeter over out of alignment, they will be on you, and that's what that coach's job is to call that to the R2's attention. So, all right, anybody else want to share any ideas or systems? Okay, so let's look at this. This is our setter here with the asterisk, our left back. Okay, so this is the triangle. They use this triangle method, which I don't use.
Hello?
Hi, who's there?
It's John Roberts. None of that out of position call affects play. And if we didn't call it so much, we wouldn't have a coach concentrating on it. Just for what it's worth, for 50 years of volleyball experience.
Okay. But what we are looking for is we're looking for advantage versus advantage disadvantage. Are they gaining an advantage by the
Are they?
Cover, they're out
Are
of
they?
They could be, yeah.
What advantage are they gaining?
That their setter's getting to the spot quicker than that they have the advantage of getting into position faster than they should. So, or it's a receive advantage where the passers that they're putting up there in order to get your best pass, you should be able to get your best 3 passers always as your 3 passers, no matter where they are on the court. There's always an alignment. But in doing that, when it gets complicated, that's when it can put somebody out of alignment or out of rotation. And so have they gained it? I would argue that they have gained an advantage by their manipulating their passers, and by doing that, by manipulating their passers, they are putting somebody out of position, and that could be deemed an advantage. So, all right, going back to this. Thank you, John. Going back to this, our front row players are in green. So we have the right front to the right side of the center front. That's legal. We have the left front also to the left side of the center front. So side to side, we're good on the front row. Right back, center back. Yep, left back is closer to the left sideline. Side to side, we're good. Right front is in front of right back, we're good. Left back is in front of center back, we're good. And left front is in front of center front, we're good. So I see that as no problem. That is a legal lineup. Nobody sees anything different, I hope.
I do.
Oh. Let me go back. Hang on.
Yeah, can you go back?
Yep.
Center front, center back.
Center front, center back.
No, this caught me last time. Right. Center back. Sorry. Center back and center front here. Is this where you're looking at, Tony?
Yes. Center back needs to be behind center front.
Right.
Right. We just went over that. Yeah. So.
Yeah. That caught me last time too.
But otherwise, they're good. If center back takes
this is the overlap right here.
Back, they're probably going to be legal.
Hey Jeff.
Yeah.
What was the triangle thing you were explaining that you don't use?
Well, so if you look, these are your front. They put your front row and put your front row players in a triangle and put your back row players in a triangle. Make sure the center, what this is helping you with, is that the center always has to be the middle point of that triangle. Okay, the center back has to be.
Gotcha,
If the
the
center
center.
back was over here, for example, then that wouldn't be between the other two. We'll get to that. It shows up on another one on another slide. All right. Okay, very common line up here. This is sometimes referred to as setter stack. When your setter is center back, they draw them close to the net because that's right where they want them to receive the pass. Okay, and here's that triangle we were just talking about. Is that here's the center back in between the left and the right. Okay, right front, center front, left front, center front in between the left and the right in terms of that triangle. Or I guess we should just call it an angle, not a triangle, because we're not going to complete this line. It's these three. We want it as an angle, not really a triangle. Okay, so right front, right back, good. Center front, yes, is closer than center back. That's good. Left back, left front is closer than left back. Everyone good? I would say yes. Okay. Okay, so this is where they're talking about tracing triangles or angles in front and back row. So again, that only works for your three front row and your three back row players. You're not doing that with front to back. Okay. Legal or illegal? This is what sometimes referred to as a stack, because you put all your back row players are on one side and you have all your front row players on the other side. So here, right back and right front, this could be a potential. This looks good to me. Looks like the right front. Can you guys see my cursor, the little thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like they're good. Center back looks behind to me center front. I would call that good. Left back is definitely behind left front, and side to side, they all look good. Center front is in between all their others. Okay. Okay, there it's showing you that it's legal. They're drawing the line for you, that perpendicular line to show you the center front, center back, so we don't have that same problem. Okay. All right, setter right back. So your setter was just your server. Okay, so now that's always good to know, because now you know it's their back row player, and that's also always a potential. If you're using a 5-1, the two spots that are potential are when that setter moves to the back row that you might forget that they're back row, or when that setter moves to the front row, you might forget that that's their first rotation in the front row. So those are the two where you could get a little bit confused and not, if your setter, you've been calling your setter out of the back row and all of a sudden he moves, where next rotation he's in the front, you might forget. So that's just an area to be a hot spot, I guess we'll call it. Right front, right back looks legal. Center front, center back looks legal. Left front, left back looks legal. Center front is in between the two other greens, the left and the right. Center back, yeah. So right back is closer definitely to the sideline than center back. We're good.
Hey, Jeff.
Yep.
Hey, that's not what you had up before. Just so you know, at our high school level, this is a normal serve receive. I mean, normally we bring that back in front of the left front back and have that three-person serve receive. So, and you could bring the middle back too, but most commonly that person would come back, depending on who passes better.
You're talking here in this?
Yeah, left front would come back. Yeah, left front would come back. The left back would go to the middle. They'd have that most common, I mean, 99% of the time, a three-person serve receive. And you may have a middle, the center front could come back too. Just so they didn't cross, come back and be that third person to serve receive too. That's most likely, what we're going to see most of the time. So
right, and not all the time, for sure, not all the time, but a lot of times it's your middles that your middle blockers that tend not to be your passers. So the libero, when they come in the game, they're normally, not always, of course, They come in a lot for their middle blockers to pass, to be a quality passer, which means the opposite of the libero is not a quality passer, and that's the one they're going to try and hide by either pulling them up to the net or hiding them behind somebody else so that to keep them from passing. So just be aware. Okay, this one is center. This is the one that I see the most overlap with. Hang on, Jace. Okay, if you have a question, I'll be right there. This is the one I see the biggest problem with, is that a lot of times this center back, this setter, okay, will not be between these two players. This setter back is trained to line up behind the setter front. That's what the coach tells them. You're right next to the center front. Well, if the center front happens to come over here and the center back follows them, now that could have put the center back is no longer between these two players. So that's an area you have to look for. And this is where I was talking about the two circles, because if you have the center back, the setter who's standing around here, and you have that you have the jump circle, and you can see that the center back is on the edge of the jump circle, and this left back happens to be standing inside the circle of the free throw line, then that's telling you that the center back is closer to the left sideline than the left back. Does that make sense? Okay. But again, this is the one I think I see the most rotational errors on, is this particular alignment right here. Okay, setter moves to left back. Again, this is where they draw them. They'll put the setter up, and this looks really weird to a lot of people because this back row player is in front of these two front row players, and so you're thinking, well, has to be out of alignment. But they're legal this way. They're legal side to side. Left back is closer to the left sideline. Right back is closer to the right sideline. Left front is closer to the left sideline. Right front is closer to that sideline. Left back, left front, we're good.
Sorry.
It's all right. Center back and center front, we're good. And right back and right front, we're good. So, but this is the one I think that confuses people a lot as well. All right, legal or illegal here? Pretty much what we just looked at, I believe. Right back and right front are good. Center back and center front, this.
Legal.
No, I don't know. Center back here could be slightly in front. So this could be that one where center back is going to be in front. I think they're going to show us on the next slide. I think we're going to find the center back here is slightly in front of the center front. So
Yep, that's an overlap. Yeah.
We're going to have an overlap here. Okay, and left front and center front are okay. Side to side, they're good. It's these two. It's right here in the middle, these two that are going to cause the overlap. Let's see what they say. Yep, see that? So there's the line for you to show you that that will become an overlap.
But you were saying that if they're that close, we're not going to call that, right?
If they're what I said, Dave, is if they are equal, not if they're that close. They have to be equal. If
yeah,
you can definitely.
It probably be easy. Probably okay. I get it. Yeah.
Okay.
Equal or even. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, a lot of times in this type of, I mean, this is hard. I mean, remember, you're over here, okay, and you're looking across the court at these guys. You're the R2. You're looking across the court at these guys, and it could be a little bit of a hard angle to see. What I try and do is I try and look for lines, some sort of basketball lines or badminton lines that could help me a little bit making that call. Okay, so. All right, back to a stack. Side to side, red, the back row is good. Right front, center front, left front, they're good. Right back, right front are good. Center front is definitely closer to there, we're good. And left front is ahead of left back. That's all legal. Not too much going on there. Is that my last one? I believe it is. Okay, might be a good place for a 5-minute break. We're halfway through here, and I'm going to move to a different presentation. And so why don't we come back at 7:05? Everybody take a 5-minute break, and we'll restart.
Yay, all for a break.
Tony, are you going to share what you're eating with the rest of us? It's got to be healthy, because I know you're down to under 200 pounds. Salad.
Robert, are you in here? Are you in this room? Are you in here?
Veggie stir fry.
All right. Can I come to your house for dinner tonight?
Did we get Alyssa into the breakout room? I'm hoping we did. Alyssa, sorry, I'm okay.
Okay.
That's good, good, good. Okay.
And Tony, I hate to pick on you, but on the whistles, would you, I mean, I'm going to order like tomorrow, I guess. What would you order if you were me? Nothing, I know. You would just tell me to retire. That's separate.
I'd order a weight loss program for you.
It failed all miserably with me.
Larry, there's
This is the mask.
Oh.
Not that it looks appealing, but it has a place for the whistle.
Show it again, Kathy. I didn't see it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's hands-free.
He might have been talking about, there might actually be just a separate little cover just for the whistle that's not attached to the mask. I think I've seen those as well, that you can just get a whistle cover that's not built into the mask.
Yeah, the whistle condom.
Yeah.
Yeah. You still have to be masked though. So, I mean, inevitably, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, to me, the whistle condom's not really going to work if they're going to require you to wear a mask.
I thought the whole idea behind the whistle or the keyless whistle was that it sprays spit and stuff.
Right, that's the problem, Dick. That's what they're talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
Is that it spreads farther through the whistle than it would just through the normal conversation.
Well, I have another question then on the, if you have a whistle with the mask, if you have to talk to somebody, which you do as an official or do something verbally, you got to spit the whistle out and then be able to talk because it's stuck there?
Well, so here's what I was going to say is you can actually pull the part in for the whistle. The thing I like is it has a clip. So I can actually make it more like a reasonable regular mask and still have my whistle attached on the inside. So if I do need to let it go inside my mask, it's held on inside my mask. And yet I can still make it look like a regular mask without something hanging off the front. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the whistle's looks inside rather than outside.
Correct. So I mean, this one's a little bit big. I'm gonna have to tie it. So if I have it on the inside, I still have room for my whistle, but it's attached, so it's not gonna fall out. Does that make sense?
Sideways.
How do you get your whistle?
Yeah, no, I have it tucked in, Tony. So, but it can still attach, you can still attach the whistle on the inside. So I don't have anything hanging out here, but my whistle's not gonna fall either.
Have you tested blowing it, Kathy?
I have, but the thing is I have to wear earplugs because you get back volume. So, which I don't mind doing, I wear earplugs anyways, but I'd rather do something like that to have hands free. I mean, I know a lot of officials have assimilated to use an electronic whistle, but I also like my my dolphin whistle because it's pretty loud projection and I'm used to holding it anyways. It's not going to fall out if I have it connected on the inside of my mask.
And what about, does it fog your glass? Have you had issues with fogging of your glasses when you use it?
I know because so, okay, so being in the medical industry, I tuck my mask under my glasses. So I'm already used to doing it that way. We also use tape to actually seal a barrier. That way you don't have fog out on your glasses. Those are some tricks that we use to actually keep from our glasses fogging.
Kathy, when that whistle's not in your mouth, it's in your mask, but how do you get it to your mouth to use it?
It's in there. So if I have it inside. I can go get a whistle and put it in here. So I'm going to connect my whistle before I put it on. And it's inside. There's extra room here. I just don't have that extra pouch hanging out because I don't like the way it looks. But I have extra room here in the mask. So my whistle is going to be here, but it's going to be connected by that little clip. So I'm not going to lose my whistle.
Right, but I'm just saying, get it to your mouth to blow the right in.
I'll go get a whistle so I'll show you. Hold on.
There you go.
Dick, what happens is through the mask, because it's a soft mask, you can actually grab the end of the whistle,
right,
put it in,
and manipulate it.
Yeah, but you know, I'm gonna warn you guys one thing about wearing in today's day and age with the mask and wearing earplugs. And it's the downside of wearing a mask and blowing a whistle with a mask, as Kathy said. It's going to reverberate and echo back to you, and it's going to sound really loud. You put earplugs in now, because coaches are supposed to be wearing masks, it's going to be very hard for you to hear them. Right. And that may cause you issues if they're calling timeout and you don't hear them, or they're calling sub and you don't hear them, and heaven forbid you penalize them or you do something because you didn't hear them, because they're muffled with a mask and now you've got earplugs in. It makes it that much harder to communicate, not just with the coaches, but also your table. Your officiating table is behind you. If they're trying to get your attention and you've got earplugs in, and technically they're supposed to be masked as well, it's going to make it really, really hard. So just something to keep in mind if you want to go that route. You know, if you can go without earplugs, I don't advocate obviously wanting anybody's eyes or ears to go bad in officiating, but just keep in mind, you're going to now have some secondary issues in dealing with, you know, everyone else involved in the match once you put those earplugs in.
Tony, so back to my original question. If you're ordering, and I know you have other places where you're going to need to be looking at as far as whistles go and where you're officiating, but for high school, what would you recommend? I mean, obviously, would you just say order the Windsor or the three-tone Fox 40?
I would tell you either one.
Either one. So depending upon price.
Price and availability is a big deal. The difference that I found between them, they both really have similar sounds, similar volumes. The Fox 40 uses a 9-volt battery. The Windsor uses 2 AA batteries.
Okay.
So, and like I said, if you're, you know, I recommend buying 2 so you have one. So if one dies, you just grab another one, just like you would a spare whistle. But if you don't have a second one, you better have batteries in your pocket in case that thing dies. And then you can just, you know, it's actually not too bad. You'll flip down a little thing, this pops off, you switch the battery in and put it back in and you're ready to go. But if you don't have that battery in your pocket, now you got to go back and fumble through your bag and all sorts of stuff like that. So, and always obviously test your whistle when you get to the match. I recommend actually buying one, testing it before you leave for your match at your house. Go through all 3 tones, make sure all 3 tones work, and then it sounds loud, because it's obviously easier to change the battery at home than it is on courtside.
Okay.
Tony?
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Tony?
So right now I have a whistle in my mask. It's attached, but I can actually flip it up with my mouth. I'm just holding it so I can talk. But it's in my mouth right now. So.
But yeah, I was thinking the same thing Tony brought up too, was that we're already having issues, you know, just going to the store and try to hear some people sometimes who are wearing masks, or they can't hear you. So I had thought about that too, that, yeah, we're already going to have communication issues because of the masks.
Well, so right now I have it to the side of my mouth. You can still hear me. So everybody's kind of assimilated to being able to talk with a mask on. You're going to have to probably talk to the captain close up. And now the whistle's back in my mouth.
Kathy, the issue is not you speaking. The issue, you put earplugs in because you're using that mask, is people communicating to you. That's the issue that I was mentioning to folks. I know that we might be able to hear you when the whistle's out, but if you now put earplugs in,
Right.
your table behind you trying to get your attention, the coach trying to get your attention,
Right.
is a lot harder.
Right.
And that's true of any time you wear earplugs, whether or not it's whether you have a mask on or not. In general, once you have those earplugs in, you're now reducing that volume of sound that's coming to you. So you have to be very, very ready. Has to be on a swivel to look at both coaches, and you have to tell the table too that that they know that you've got earplugs in, and they're going to have to be loud.
What about a shield?
I'm sorry?
What about a shield instead of a mask?
Oh, you're the clear plastic shields?
Yeah.
Teachers are using those a lot.
I have a
Wouldn't that facilitate matters?
Here's John, and I've seen those and we've tried to use them before. And here's part of the problem that I think is going to come down from why they're going to say electronic whistles. Because even with that face shield, there's still an opening underneath. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not sealed against your face, so to speak. So if you blow that whistle, that moisture vapor is going to escape out from underneath. And that in itself may not preclude it being extremely safe. And then the other part too, we can speak from experience that having that, unless you're spending a lot of money and getting a really high quality shield, that plastic shield in front of you will distort your vision a little bit. And especially if it's clear, it will distort your vision.
Hey Tony, how would you find the average?
I'm sorry, Mike, I couldn't hear you.
I was just asking you, how long did you find that the electronic whistle was lasting you with the batteries? Would it last you for a weekend? Would it last? How long did you find that you had to replace the batteries roughly? You know what I mean? Just so we have, yeah.
When we did the AVP events, we had 3 weekends in a row, and we had 3 days each weekend. Generally, those batteries lasted a full 6 days of officiating.
Wow. Okay, that's good.
So generally, I mean, I would say if you're reffing two or 3 days in a week, say you're doing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I think by the time you get to Saturday, you probably should be double checking that whistle, that electronic whistle.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we're going to go back into our discussion here. So I'm going to screen share in a second here, and I have a presentation. They're using video that was shot in USA. Okay, so not all the rules and mechanics are the same. They are taught, so if there's something that doesn't jive because of the difference in the who are in USA versus high school, then we'll stop. We'll notate that or talk about it if we have to. All right, so I'm going to jump ahead in this because it's really the first part of stuff we've already covered. And so real quick here, this just is showing the difference between the 5-1 and the 6-2. The 5-1 is where the setter is going to set all the way around. Move it forward here. There's the 5-1, the setter coming to the front. Here's the 6. So that's and then here's the 6-2 real quick.
The other common formation is a 6-2. This formation calls for 2 players to share the setter role, so they play opposite each other. Whichever of these players is in the back row handles the setting duties, while the front row player serves as a hitter. Thus, each player will serve as a setter for 3 rotations. So with this formation, there are 6 hitters and 2 setters. Since this module is dedicated to a 5-1 offense, you'll hear nothing further on this formation.
Okay, and the other thing, like Tony said earlier, when you're trying to remember in the 6-2, that's when you do get a lot of subs in where your setter and the opposite are going to change, because when that setter moves to the front, a lot of coaches are pulling that setter, putting in a big hitter. So now you have a different number to put in your head. So that's in the 6-2, you do have a lot, probably more numbers to remember than you will in the 5-1. All right, so here's.
For this match, the USA team is running a 5-1 offense, meaning they are using 1 setter and 5 hitters. You might know this by studying the team in previous matches in which they played, from talking with other referees, or through watching the warm-ups carefully. Of course, even with that knowledge, a team may change its offense at a moment's notice, so you need to be on top of those changes. Here's the lineup for the USA team, which is the team in dark blue on the second referee's right.
Okay, so here's what I was saying. This is the first thing. We will not have in high school, we're not going to have a lineup sheet like this. They need to turn their lineup sheet in, listing their first server in a vertical fashion, not like this. So that's one thing. That's the one thing. USA, they're in the dark blue with the white libero. That's the USA team that she's talking about.
With libero number 3 replacing player number 7 for the first rally when authorized to do so by the second referee. For training purposes, this lineup remains visible during the entire module. During a match, you can refer to the lineup sheet, which should remain on the score table.
That's another point I meant to bring up, is that if you are having, if something funny is going on and you're not quite seeing it, as the R2, I will sometimes back up and I'll glance at the lineup sheet or even at the score, or even at the scorebook to see where players are in relationship to each other. So if I'm having something that I think is out of the ordinary and it's not clicking with me, sometimes I will double check myself by going back to the lineup sheet that the coach turned in.
USA is starting in what's called rotation 3, where the setter, number 4, is positioned in left back. On contact of service, he heads to the passing target at the net. The primary passers, who are also the outside hitters, are number 16 and number 14, starting in center front and center back, respectively. After the pass, number 16 most often swings to the left antenna for an attack. Number 11 is the front row middle hitter, starting in left front. At the appropriate time, he moves to the middle of the court for a quick set. In right back is the libero, who, if you remember, replaced the other middle, number 7. Lastly, the opposite is number 12 in right front, who hits a back set or a cross. That baseline view is great for the entire picture of the team serve-receive. The second referee, however, does not have that same view. He sees something like this. The second referee's challenge is to keep that baseline view or the numerical lineup in his head and apply it to the perspective that he has. No easy feat, and one that requires some nimble thinking. When a team is in this rotation on the second referee's right, the most relevant alignments are on the second referee's side of the court. When the team on the second referee's left is in rotation 3, however, it may feel like the important relationships are a long way away and difficult to judge. Let's go back to the baseline view. In this serve-receive, there are 2 hotspots for potential positional faults. First is number 4's position relative to number 14. 4 must be closer to the left sideline than 14. If 14 moves to his left to get in a better position to pass, 4 must move with him, or a positional fault may occur. The second potential positional fault is one that often goes undetected. Number 16 is center front, and number 14 is center back. So 16 must remain in front of 14. To better receive a short serve, 14 might slide toward the net, creating a potential front to back positional fault. Please note, these are frequent potential issues, but others may arise as each team strategically deploys its players and makes adjustments. Should I warn the team or should I call the positional fault? This is the question that referees of all levels have wrestled with for years. The answer? It depends. It's always situational. But here are some tips that you might find useful. Warn when the setter pushes your tolerance by leaving early. Warn when the team's alignment doesn't quite move players far enough. For example, when players stack up into a corner of the court. Warn when you have to count floorboards or get out a mental ruler to identify a fault. Again, this is where the art of officiating comes into play. On the other hand, faults you must whistle include after you have warned the team about the potential fault and the alignment is not addressed. When players are not even close or are flat out in the wrong position. Now going back to our set in progress, you see that USA has rotated one position for the next serve receive into rotation 4, with the setter in left front. This pattern, along with rotations 5 and 6, do not occur with a 6-2, because the setter always comes out of the back row. Here, number 4 tucks himself into the left front corner of the court, and the middle, number 11, joins him. This is legal as long as number 4 is closer to the sideline. The setter, of course, gets ready to move to target while the middle prepares to hit a quick set in the middle of the court. Number 16, right front, slides way over to the left side of the serve receive so he can pass and then attack a ball which is set near the left antenna. In the back row, number 12 is not one of the primary passers as he is tucked into the right back corner, leaving most of the court for the libero, who is in center back, and number 14 to slide into passing corridors. After the pass, the opposite may well be set for a back row attack out of either the right side or middle of the court. Again, going to the second referee's perspective, this is what that serve receive looks like. As mentioned earlier, if there are any alignment issues that involve numbers 4, 11, or 16, it would be very easy for the second referee to communicate the needed changes. Step on the court, number 4, or number 11, move to your right. If you use this technique, be very clear with your communication and choose words that the players can quickly process. The last thing you want is for the players to be more focused on what they see as vague instructions.
Hello?
Back again to the overhead view. In this rotation, there are few possible positional faults as long as the setter and opposite get into their respective corners. If the opposite is part of the team's passing core, a fault becomes much more likely. In that circumstance, the opposite moves forward to pass.
Did we lose the sound?
Yeah.
Making sure it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Jeff, you there?
I'm here.
Yeah, we definitely lost the sound. Hey, Jeff, do you have the audio on your computer?
I don't have
Jeff.
audio.
I don't think he can hear you.
Jeff, can you hear us?
Jeff, you're muted. We don't hear anything.
Sorry.
Hurt to Jeff.
We don't have any volume audio.
There we go.
Number 16, who
Sorry about
just
that.
served, must be to the right of number 12. Again, the opposite in center back, may get a back row set in the middle or right side of the court. Here is what rotation 5 looks like to the second referee. USA's formation here is nice and clean and easy to follow. But to keep up with the flow of the match, it is important for the second referee to remain alert even on easier points. This is a very straightforward reception pattern, but there still are possible issues, particularly if the opponent goes on a run of points. If the libero moves forward to pass a short serve, a positional fault occurs if he gets in front of number 14. And the opposite number 12 may lose track of where he must be or get over-eager to transition to a back row attack out of the right side. In rotation 6, the 5-1 setter is in right front. Number 7, a middle hitter, has entered the game for the libero and is in the front. Number 14 is in center front, but receives serve near the left sideline to put him in good position for his left side attack. The libero, who has replaced number 11 in the back row, is right back behind number 4 and to the right of number 16, the back row outside hitter. Number 12, the opposite, is to 16's left, and again, he is likely to transition to a back row attack out of the middle or right side. The second referee's view of rotation 6 looks something like this. Note that you just see the elbow of number 4, who is nearly out of the picture on the left side. From here, the biggest challenge is to evaluate the relative positioning of the primary passers and to be sure that the front row player is in front of the back row player. As in rotation 3, the primary passers are center front and center back, setting up the same potential front to back positional fault. But this time, number 14 is in the front row and number 16 is in the back row. Depending on the team and the serving strategies by the opponent, number 16 can get in front of number 14.
All right, so I just wanted to sort of I was hoping you can see some actual players on the court and some of the challenges and what we're looking at. The only other one I really want to touch on a little bit is that beware when your setter's right front, sometimes they will try to disguise themselves as a back row player so that they look like a back row player to the other team so that they can go up and dump the ball and catch them off guard. So that's the other situation where you got to be looking for, are they, they're trying to act like a back row player, and sometimes they'll even, when they start, they'll line up behind, they're a front row player rather, but they'll line up behind the right back to make them look like a back row player, but before the whistle, they'll step back in front. So it looks like your setter might be leaving early, but your setter is actually already a front row player. So,
Hey, Jeff, can I say something on that?
Yep, go ahead.
That happens mostly, and we did it all the time at Buena, and that is when you have the setter middle front and back front, and you put them in the middle. So that the greatest fake on that anyway was when the ball came up to pass, the setter front row would take that as the other one peeled back and dump that ball, because it confused them in a 6-2 quite a bit more than a 5-1. So in that rotation, the front row takes it a lot as a setter. That's a good point, bringing that up.
So, all right. Any other questions? Anybody want to bring up any other points of emphasis or ideas or questions about our rotation, about alignment and rotation? Okay, so we're going to transition from that into sort of a discussion on back row attacks. We're probably going to we'll do a little on back row attacks tonight, and I think we'll probably pick up a little bit more on the next session. But again, the importance of knowing where your setter is, because you need to know whether they're front row or back row is going to determine a lot of faults that you're going to have. So when we have a back row player, the rule is that a back row player may not attack a ball that is completely higher than the top of the net, okay? If they are in front, on or in front of the attack line. So you have to be aware, there are a lot of factors that go into this. You have to be aware where the hitter's feet are, or setter's feet possibly are when they attack a ball. You have to be aware of whether that ball was completely or partially above or below the top of the net. And when the ball is farther away from the net, that becomes much more difficult to determine. And this also would relate to a libero hitting a ball that is higher than the top of the net, because they're most likely going to be hitting that ball from well back. And so that makes it really difficult to determine whether that ball was, you have to think spatially here, whether that ball was above or below the top of the net. The only way that I use to determine that is I look at the flight of the ball. Is it a flat or downward trajectory by that hitter? I'm talking the libero here most likely, or does it sort of have an arc or a curve? Larry or Tony, any ideas on how you guys judge that, or any other things you do differently?
I'll defer to Tony, but I try to set a position that I can judge from where I am as to where the ball is based on fixtures in the gym. So if the ball's above that particular level of point, and the ball gets attacked there, then it's above. Especially it's difficult when the ball is set fairly off, really far off the net, and that's when you get, hate to say it, the liberos back there taking a big swing at the ball. It's a little more difficult to judge than somebody who's attacking the ball that's on or close to the attack line, or actually broad jumping into that area.
I tend to err more to give them the benefit of the doubt, unless I am sure on that call by the libero hitting out of the back row like that. So I'll give them a little more leeway on whether that ball was above or below, unless I have some real strong knowledge. Tony, anything to add, or Jim, anything to add?
As far as when you're looking at a setter, whether they're above the height of the net when they're dumping the ball, or one of the suggestions that I would make is watch warm-ups. Because a lot of times players that like to jump set, they'll do it in warm-ups. And then also you get the chance to see, especially if it's a taller setter, 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot, when after they set the ball and they release it, where is their hand in relation to the net if they're standing flat-footed? How high do they really need to get before they're above the height of the net? So you get the chance to kind of preview that during warm-ups. So, and then the other time, a lot of times, and probably more in the men's game than the women's game, they will hit out of the back row as part of their warm-ups, or they'll even practice it as as their normal hitting practice. And so that's when you get a chance as well to see, you get a chance to kind of judge while you're on the floor before it happens in a game. You kind of can preconceive, is a 5'2" kid that's jumping as high as they can going to get above the net? Probably not. But, if you've got that kind of what I consider kind of a tweener player that might or might not, watching them in warmups is a good time to get a notion of whether or not they're going to, how high do they really have to jump to get above the height of the net.
And we talked about that as well with the hands, is that you want to be watching, you're watching for that. You're watching how the setter, does he or she have a peculiar sort of set? Is it a little different? You're looking for all those clues. So those are things you should be watching in the pregame. Thanks, Tony. That was good. Good info. So those are back row. Obviously, I like when I have them setting to a back row player and it's going to be on the R2 side and they sort of come out of that corner, where they're hitting, a back row player is hitting out of that corner, where we're talking the attack line and the sideline. I really rely on my R2 to help me with that call. I am looking at my R2 to see what they saw with the feet, and I kind of rely on them. I'll rely on them anywhere between the midcourt and that sideline. So anywhere in there, I'm always looking for help. Doesn't mean I'm not gonna, if I see it and I'm sure of it, I'm definitely gonna call that as a back row attack if they're on the line, touching the line. But I will often look for my help from my R2 in that situation. So dumping with the setter, the biggest things you're going to see a lot are those overpasses where it's a bad pass from the back row. So the setter's trying to save that ball, so they're either going up with a single fist to try and bring it back. Those are potentials. You got to be thinking right away. Okay, is that ball coming backwards? Were they directing it that way? Okay, were they directing it towards the opponent's court, or did it legally? Were they trying to just get it up and it floated into that neutral zone where it was legally blocked? Once you have a legal block, or once that ball crosses 100% into the opponent's court, that's when you're going to blow back row attack on that player. Okay. Any questions on anything people want to discuss or situations they might have run into with a back row attack that they'd like to share? Okay. All right. The other back row foul we have is back row block. Back row block can get a little trickier because the key to a back row block is that the player's hands have to be higher than the net. That's one. And it used to be, I believe, I'm pretty sure that was not always the case. You could have a back row block if a setter was in blocking form, having their hands above their head, but that was not reaching the top of the net. Years ago, we were calling that a block, but we are no longer. Now the key is the fingers have to be higher than the net. But here's the caveat, or the issue with that, is that if that setter is maybe moving to the net to get to a ball, an overpass, and they block that ball down into the setter, and the setter is there, if their hands are above the net, we're going to have a back row block on that setter. Even though the setters, they could be sideways to the net. The setter's intent was not to block the ball. The setter was just trying to get to the ball to set it. But if it's blocked back into their hands, we're going to have a back row block on that setter. The other thing potential is the setter gets there and doesn't jump and is smart enough to either lower their hands or isn't tall enough, which is a lot of the case in the high school, isn't tall enough to reach to the top of the net if they're flat-footed. Then what we're going to have, they might be in a blocking motion where their hands are up, but we're going to have first contact. So now you got to put that in your brain that, oh, wait, that's not a back row block, but it is a first contact. It'll look like a block, and players might react to it as a block and think they still have 3 hits remaining, but you got to remember they only have 2 hits left in that situation. So, anyone else have any other situations or questions in relationship to those?
I have one, Jeff.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
When it looks like the setter she's a back row player, and she's trying, it looks like she might be a little bit lower than the net on the hit, but it truly is an attack player, an attack shot. Mm-hmm. What are you doing about those?
Well, I'm not looking at their hands in that respect. I'm looking at the ball. So don't worry about what their hands are doing. Worry about where the ball is. If you can determine that part of that ball, even the very bottom, was just below the top of the net, you're going to let that go. Again, if you're not sure, if you can't make that determination, I'm going to probably let that go and give the safe signal. And that's the other thing about back row, is that you want to be giving that, when that setter comes and dumps that ball, if they're below, if you don't have a back row attack, throw that hand out there and let the coach know that you saw that setter was there and that is below the net. Okay?
And it looks like it's so close sometimes that, it's an attacking mode in a sense, and the coaches, of course, are going crazy. And you're like, no, that was a little bit lower than the net.
Well, that's why I like to use that signal to sort of let them know that we have it below the height of the net.
Yeah. So, and remember too, Steve, I know you're talking about, they're obviously trying to attack the ball. we don't judge intent or technique. We're judging contact. Where was the ball?
Okay.
Whether they hit it, tipped it, whatever it was, we judge the contact, not necessarily the intent or technique. We don't. That's not what we judge. We judge contacts only.
But my suggestion is if it's so close, Steve, that you can't really, that you're not sure one way or the other, let it go. Just let it play on. Let the players determine the game in that situation, or the outcome, rather than you, if it's that close.
Yeah. The other thing.
All right. Thanks. Oh.
The other thing that I had this happen once, I called a back row attack on a player. Clearly, ball was, but made contact. Clearly, when they made contact, the ball was above the net. However, when it hit the net, it actually hit the net because tops hit the net and went over. And the coach said, "Well, how can that be when the ball hit the net? So therefore, part of the ball was below the net." And I said, it's based on when your player contacted the ball, not when it hit the net.
That's correct.
So you had it. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, that's a hard one to sell too, Larry.
It wasn't after I explained that, how I later on explained how physics work with topspin, and it brought the ball down.
Really?
You contacted it.
Okay.
You were so confused it didn't matter. So was I.
Again, my suggestion is don't make a call you cannot explain. Don't make a call where you have to go to a coach and you cannot give him a reasonably quick answer as to why you made that call. Okay.
Hey, David, I see your question down in the chat that says, I thought we do not give the safe sign anymore. And I'm going to tell you from both the coaching perspective and from an officiating perspective, we don't want that safe signal every time. Where we want it is if that hitter is this close to the line, right? Where from a distance, it looks like they could be on or in front of it. But if they're this far behind the line, if you can see it, especially like in club where you have tiles, if they're a tile behind that line, now you don't need to make that safe signal because it should be obvious. And in terms of whether a ball is above the height of the net or not, generally, I don't recommend making that safe signal until all of a sudden you got a coach that's going ballistic, that's going, she's back row, or whatever, they're screaming at. At that point, I would probably go ahead and give that so that you recognize, coach, I know that player's back row, and I'm telling you play was legal. But I don't necessarily do it every time. Does that make sense? Okay.
I recall reading that they were allowing those signals, those informal signals were allowable. Roy, have you heard anything different? Maybe Roy's not with us right now. Okay. I'll look that up. David, I'll look it up and get back to you with an answer on that.
I am with you, Jeff. I just got stuck unmuting.
Okay.
Tony's very accurate. We're only giving those, we're pushing them back or we're pushing them down, but it better be awfully close. If there is a foot, I'm talking 12 inches, leave it alone. If it's 2 or 3 inches, you can give them, and you may not even need to do that unless at the end of the play, that coach has a complaint. Hey, he was back row. At that point in time, I may push it back or push it down. But if that's what you're focused on doing is giving those signals while that play is going on, you're being distracted from what else you're doing. So those are they're 2 cents for you.
Thank you. And the other thing on this is often if I'm the R2, I will give, when that setter comes and dumps the ball and it's back row and I know I'm going to give this signal inside to my partner. I'm going to give them some signals. It's there. I'm just telling them when I'm doing that, I'm just telling them, hey, I'm making you aware that's a back row player who just put that ball over. The R1 has to make that determination as to where that ball was, whether it was above or below the height of the net. Okay, so I'm helping you by keying you in that, hey, remember, we got a back row. So you still have to make that determination, okay, on the height of the ball as the R1 if I'm helping you. And I'm looking for, I like my R2s to help me with that call as well. It just makes me know that they're in the game as much as I'm in the game, that they're IDing that we just had a potential back row attack. Okay? So as the R1 though, it is your call all the way to blow that whistle and make that call based on the information that you have. So, all right. Any other questions, concerns? Okay, I have left the study guide. I'm leaving the study guide open till the end of this week. So Friday night, I will close it Saturday morning. So if you have not completed the study guide, please go do that. I know I got a ton yesterday and today. So I got a lot of people's completed study guides. And then we will be opening the classification exam after that. Okay.
How long do we have to do that?
We're leaving, I think we're going to give you 2 weeks to do the classification exam.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Excuse me, but you know me, I'm a pain in the you know what. But
yeah, I know that.
That's not a classification exam. Isn't that just simply our certification exam?
Certification. I always call it class, but yeah, certification, I guess, is the correct.
I'm being a pain. I know. Just tell me to shut up. It's easy. Everybody does.
And Jeff, are the case studies just extra practice?
Yes, case studies are just extra practice, and I'm not guaranteeing those were put on. I did not put those up, and those were put up from material that is a few years old. So I'm not guaranteeing that those case study plays are all correct in what they say. Okay.
Okay.
And those answers aren't exactly matched up with the questions. I think
I was getting a lot of crosstalk. Say that again.
The answers to the case study plays aren't exactly accurate with the question. I think it was Tim texted me and told me he put A for all of them and got 55%. So those do not sweat those.
At all. I'm not even looking. I haven't even been looking at what the scores were on those. So.
Yeah, so I have to ask, but when was this study guide exam notified? When were we notified about this?
At the very beginning, it's been on the website since we started, and it should have been in, yeah.
I think since August.
Yeah, well, I sure didn't know.
It's been up since mid-July, but
yeah.
I guess we didn't exactly communicate that.
I thought we did, but that's a requirement every year, John. That's always a 2 hours worth of instruction is that study guide.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get more time to finish the study guide thing?
Well, I extended it, John. I extended it till, like I said, till Friday night. So.
And John, they give you the rules right there. It's pretty. It won't take you that long.
Midnight, Friday night.
I'm going to close it. You even have it later. I'm not going to close it. I have to go in and manually close it, I believe, and turn it off. So I'm not going to do that till I get up on Saturday morning.
Okay.
Okay.
So that means everybody, you have more than 48 hours to get on it right now.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
That was a great close-up, by the way.
Just saying, it's not like we just started playing volleyball and officiating yesterday. Everybody knows that there's a responsibility, and one of the things is our study guide and then our certification. So.
Yeah, but we didn't know if we were going to have a season or not.
We've known all summer, John.
We have?
It's okay. You know what? If you guys can get on it, that would be wonderful. And we're here if you have any questions.
All right. If nobody Actually, Robert, you want to call back the other breakout room?
I'm just gonna go in and see what they're doing, but it's probably fine to let everyone out here.
So, all right, guys. We're letting you out. We're letting you out of class a little early tonight. I know the other night I think we kept you a little over, anyways. So we're all good. I am available for if anyone has questions, wants to call, email, anything like that.
Okay, thanks.
I'm
Talk
letting
to you guys later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Jeff,
you.
as usual, I have a stupid question.
Yeah.
What's the next several days for classes?
We have 2 more classes. We're off next week. No class next week.
I can't hear you.
Somebody's on mute.
That sounds like Karen.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
No class next Wednesday. We have one the following Wednesday.
Just one more?
No, 2 more, and then one on the 28th. I believe
28th.
is the last official one, and then we're going to do a makeup meeting in November if anybody for a makeup meeting for people that might need hours.
Okay, so we have one October 28th.
Correct.
And what's the other day?
Should be 14th and 28th.
The 14th and the 28th. Perfect. Thank you. And then maybe a makeup. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And for all the mentors, there are no more. We're no more first year meetings, so there's no more mentor meetings that you have to attend either.
Thank you so much, Jeff. You do such a great job.
Thanks, Larry.
Deal with people like me.
Yeah, I gotta put. Hey, you know, Larry, I put up with 4th graders and kindergartners all the time in my job, so
I don't qualify at that level.
Yeah,
he fits right in.
There's a lot
Jeff?
of truth to that.
Yeah, Jason.
Is the classification open right now?
No, it is not open right now.
Okay. When is it going to be open?
I can't remember what date I had it scheduled to open.
Okay, no worries. No
It's
worries.
possible it's October 1st, but I think it's a little later. But I'll go check it out.
Okay. No worries. I was just curious. Thank you.
And Robert and myself will put out a email about the window for the classification.
Yeah, right now it's scheduled to come out tonight at midnight.
Okay.
But if you want to delay it until Saturday morning, then that might be a good idea. It's up to you.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, and then so people don't get confused, are you guys still planning on having one mandatory officials scrimmages?
Can't answer that for you yet, Chris, because we got to get word on what CIF and the schools want to do. They might want to limit contact as much as possible. In the past, we've often done those where we'll have 5, 6, 10 officials at one location during those, and they may not want that. So I'll know more towards the end of the month. I can't answer that right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Because we also have to find ways to help our new officials with some court time or practice before they are actually thrown out there.